You're listening to Infinite TBR, the podcast where we try not to buy more books. I'm Smack.
And I'm Gabby. Spoiler alert! We're going to avoid major spoilers, and when we can, warn when we're going to discuss a particular book in detail so you can avoid that part of the episode. You can also check the show notes for time-stamped flags identifying potential spoilers.
I am going to insert a potential apology here. I don't know how much the ceiling fan is going to show up in this recording, but if it's noisy, apologies for that.
Oh, it's got moons all over it, and it's sparkly. Book barn galore. Precious cargo. Yes, it is.
This is the one I got for me.
That's cute. That's very witchy. It's orange with black cats and stars and a moon. That's so nice. That's so wonderful.
I got a giant one, and I was like, this is too big for some of my books. I need a smaller one. And then I was like, Ariana birthday's coming up. I should get one for you.
I thought we were going to just miss it. I was not particularly...
We're gonna do it.
Able to.
We don't have time, but we're recording.
So what is this? This is our third anniversary.
And for those who can't see everything that just transpired, I got us these little. Yeah, I just realized that no one else can see from Book Barn Galore.
And the tagline is "Precious Cargo," which is just
so cute.
It's so cute.
They had a tent at the mini North Park Book Fair.
Oh, are they local?
I don't know, but I don't know if, like, they're local or just whoever was selling them all. Yeah. Whatever, not retailer? Whatever.
We had all these plans for that day. I had a friend in town who was teaching Clarion, the first week of Clarion, and then we had the North Park Book Fair, and we were going to hang out and record.
The mini North Park Book Fair.
It's still a book fair.
Because the actual North Park Book Fair is going to be in October.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know what happened, because usually it's summer.
Oh, the big one.
Yeah.
That
we did last year, yeah.
That one is too big.
Depends on what you plan for.
It's true.
For the middle of summer.
The one in the middle of summer, though, they have a lot of tents that are not book related.
Right, yeah, that's true.
Ads.
That's true. There were a bunch
So, in my humble opinion, the mini one is better.
Have you been to the mini one before?
Yes.
Oh.
I showed up and you handed me that gorgeous cup.
No, that was the North Park Book Fair.
Oh.
I don't know that they've ever split them up like this before, but if...
I have no idea what we're talking about anymore.
Me neither now.
We're not on the same page, that is very clear.
Anyway, I got us these cute little book pocket things so that
hold your books.
You can keep your friends' books secure when you take them out in a bag. Or shove them into your purse, which is what I tend to do with my books. Or when your dog walks through and steps on them.
Yes, that happens. It does. Anyway.
So we have these plans to do book fair.
Eventually. Whenever they show up.
Whatever thing we were gonna do last weekend, but yeah, of course.
I hit my head while I was cat sitting because I was rushing around and not paying attention to where I was going, and I hit my head. And it was the last day of StokerCon, which is this horror convention that switches cities every year. And so they were in San Diego this year, and I got to stay at Gabby's, which meant it was like a 7-minute drive away. And so, but the last morning, I hadn't been sleeping super well, and I hadn't been eating super well. And I was like, you have 2 more panels, you're gonna get there for the 9 a.m. one, and then this afternoon you can come back and sleep. But I was tired, and I was a little dizzy to begin with, and I hit my head, and I fell over, and then I got back up, and I was like, okay, we're going!
You actually ended up going?
Yeah, I went. The 9 a.m. panel was really good. The 10 a.m. one was not. But I'm glad I didn't.
So you're glad you made it, okay.
Yeah. I think it was the 10 a.m. panel that was not great, but so.
Yay,
I know. I have a journal with a cute little fox and a star on it that I use only for cons. So I go into panels and I am that person who takes notes by hand.
Oh yeah, that's what I do at cons.
Well, we are those people. I don't think everybody.
It's shocking to me that
I can't remember anything.
Yeah, it does not stick in my brain unless I handwrite.
Even without a concussion, it doesn't stick in my brain. So I guess it was the 9 a.m. one that drove me insane. So it's called Digging Up the Dead: Research for Horror Writers. And then there was this one guy. I mean, like, for the most part, it was very useful. They had, like, websites you can look up, and, like, you can look up insurance maps online, which will tell you what kind of buildings existed during a particular decade.
Huh.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. Like, interesting stuff. And sort of off-the-wall methods to bring life to your writing.
Okay.
But there was one guy... I did not write this down because I was involved in this, who was, like, talking about how, like, specifically asylums in historical horror, like, you don't really have to, basically, you don't have to, like, humanize the doctors and nurses because they're always evil. And I was like, that's weird. Why would you not humanize a character you're writing? That's like the basic idea of writing.
And that's super reductive.
Yes, exactly. And so a woman in front of me raised her hand and sort of like asked for clarification and also giving him an opportunity to backtrack.
Right. And
he did not take it.
A lot of people are good people and end up, for example, joining the Navy.
And so then I raised my hand and I was like, it's not like they were just monsters, they were people, and some
probably thought they were doing a good thing.
And others were there and they knew they were harming their patients. But you can't just have them be like mustache twirling crazies.
A lot of people get drawn into doing bad things,
right?
Like a frog in boiling water, toad and whatever.
And then I got to talk about I didn't go on very long. I said, like, a good example of this is Silence for the Dead by Simone St. James.
What I thought of. I was like,
and so, like, it helps that she is not trained as a nurse and doesn't know what she's doing and has to find, like, a secret Nurse for Dummies book under her bed or something. But, like, she saw the emotional result on these guys when the only response was to, like, shoot them up with sedatives and send them to bed. And, like, she saw that was really damaging and upsetting to everyone who was treated that way. And, like, that's not... And then there was this other woman who raised her hand, and so, like, there was this whole back and forth, and it was all guys and women. Ooh. It was... I didn't realize it in the moment, but it was sort of weird that way. So...
Yikes.
That was the last morning. But a lot of the rest of it was really interesting and fun, and
even while concussed.
I was only concussed for those 2 panels.
Oh, just that was it for that day.
That was it. It was a morning to midday thing, and everybody broke camp and headed back to their hotels and or the airport and or their friend's apartment next to the beach. Yay! And then on the drive home, I was on the 8 going west, and it's a very straight shot. And I was like, oh, I'm still dizzy. Well, I've had lunch, so that's not that. Oh, no.
What could have happened?
I know, it was honestly the dumbest possible way to concuss myself. Just not paying attention to where I was going and moving too fast.
That's just the dumbest possible way.
It's oh god. It's one small miscalculation that has dogged me for the last month.
I have hit my head on my cabinets multiple times.
Oh my god.
And every time I, like, dodge those, I think of you. But I would think of the last time I brained myself and been like, not today, cabinet door, not today.
The only reason Gabby has a low loft bed and a ceiling fan, but also, like, this nice little mattress to turn the underbed part into a nest. So that's where I was sleeping, because when I was 10, my mother hit her head on a ceiling fan, and it was extremely traumatic.
And you can sit straight up and not be anywhere near the ceiling fan. It's literally just, like, getting in and out.
Yeah.
And if you're not fully aware of the space you have to work with.
Right. And so, like, I knew to be really careful, even in the middle of the night, but I also knew that I didn't have to worry about a ceiling fan.
You should have just turned it off.
It was hot.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that was, like, the first week it got really hot.
But I thought I was being so careful. And then in the middle of the night, 7 days later, I hit my head again. And then I moved to the couch, which turns out to be the most comfortable place to sleep anyway.
Nailed it.
Yeah.
My dad's coming to visit this weekend.
Recommended the couch.
I know. I'm like, maybe I should put him on the couch instead.
To be fair, the second time I hit my head wouldn't have been hard enough to concuss myself.
Except that it was the second time.
Except it was the second time. So, got my bell rung a bit.
And we're fine.
It's fine. I don't have any kind of internal bleeding or whatever. I got a CT scan.
We checked.
Eventually. I didn't tell anybody for a couple of days either. I've had a really bad concussion before, and I knew it wasn't that bad, and I knew that even with that other worse concussion, there's nothing a doctor can do. Like, unless they have to, like, drill a hole in your skull to relieve pressure, like, they send you home.
Right.
So, I checked my pupils, I read everything on the Mayo Clinic,
is that even
UCLA.
A real thing, or is that one of those, like, urban myth things, too?
I don't know if they do it anymore. Mm-hmm. They probably have better ways to
do
combat that, but they used to.
Right. But yeah, I realized, like, for a head injury, their options are pretty limited.
Yeah. And nothing showed up on the CT scan.
Right.
Although apparently, if it shows up on the CT scan, it's really bad. CT scans don't get, like, super detailed.
Oh, okay.
So, maybe there is a minor brain bleed. Who knows? But not enough to cause extra problems.
I mean, obviously, like, there's clearly damage, because you feel it.
Because I can't drive.
Yeah. But, like, in terms of...
Yeah. So, also, apparently, concussion care has changed a lot in the last 12 years since I had one.
I've only gotten a, like, maybe concussion once, and looking back, I almost certainly was not concussed. But I hit my head really hard. Like, we were in PE, and we were playing, like, field hockey on the basketball courts, and we had our heads down.
Oh, we were doing the thing.
And I ran right into one of the other students. My head went right into her nose, and she ended up with a nosebleed.
Did you break her nose?
And I don't think I broke it. I think I just caused a nosebleed. And then she had hit my head enough that, like, when we showed up at the nurse's office, they, like, sent me home with a, like, potentially concussed, like, here's, like, to keep an eye on and whatever. And I, like, my head hurt, but, like, I felt fine after, like, an hour. And I was like, sweet, I get to go home.
Yeah.
That's the exciting part. Felt bad for making her nose bleed. She looked much worse off, but I was probably technically more hurt than she was. But still.
That's funny.
That's the only time I've at least, like, had medical intervention. But I've also, like, brained myself on those cabinets.
Yeah, I mean, like, I hit my head.
I'm not sure what counts as a concussion. I've never had this situation. Yeah. I've never felt dizzy afterwards.
Yeah, so this is the second time. So I knew what had happened once I realized it wasn't like I haven't been taking care of myself.
Right.
It was actually, like, the most ideal place to end up with a concussion, where, like, I had a really good excuse not to cook.
Right. It was cool.
It was cool. I was alone. Nobody was going to bother me. I barely had to walk from the couch to the bathroom and back.
Just cohabitating with a demon. It's fine.
And she was very
she was
reasonable.
Nice to you this time, relatively.
Yeah, she was lovely.
Sweet little bean.
I was just so glad she didn't sit at, like, the crossroad of all of your rooms and attack every time I walked by, because that one got old.
Oh dear.
But, like, she came over multiple times and would sit on the couch with me, and I'd sit there as long as I possibly could until I absolutely had to go to the bathroom.
That's the move.
And I was very gentle, and then when I come back, I get this, like, I mean, I knew I was going to get this look.
You got it.
But it was more like, it was less, I hate you at your core essence for being here, and more like, how dare you?
Fix it.
So anyway.
So books and stuff.
Yeah. I read quite a lot while I was at Gabby's. It was lovely.
I realized, 2 weeks in, that Mysterious Galaxy Summer Bingo had started. And I was like, oh no, I have to catch up. So I stuffed, like, mostly novellas
still have, like,
into the back
55 days.
Yeah, but now I'm actually, like, caught up to, like, what I'd have to be at to finish up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But when I was, like, halfway, because I spent the first, like, week of June reading Winter, which is at, like, 900
by
page.
Kristen Kishore.
No. Kristen Kishore is Graceling.
Oh, you're right.
Winter is the fourth. Yeah, it's Marissa Mayer. It's the Lunar Chronicles, the last of the Lunar Chronicles. And if I'd known Bingo had started, I would have shelved that for after Bingo, because it was like 900 pages.
Yeah, that was a very large book. And it was paperback, right?
It was paperback, but I actually ended up reading the ebook from the library because
it's enormous.
It's heavy.
Yeah.
It's smaller than the third one,
Right.
but heavier. And technically longer. It is longer, but they changed the paper they used for it.
I bet.
So it was enormous. Yeah. And I was like so ready to read all this other stuff because I was on an international trip and I was reading on the plane and I was like, I'm gonna get so much reading done. And I did technically get a lot of reading done, but all my reading
just one book.
was winter.
That's fun.
And then I found out Bingo had started and I was like,
I know, you panicked.
No.
I got this like absolutely all caps, multiple texts in a row from her when she realized. And she was like freaking out about how we have to catch up. And I was just looking at it and going, I guess I'm not doing bingo this year. But since then,
you
I am
so fast.
I mean, yes. I'm having hard trouble sticking with any one book. But like,
you just gotta make it to 50% for it to count. That's my rule.
That's true. That's a good point. And it's not like they're bad. I just keep starting new books before I finish them. I finished a couple, but then I'm like, oh, now I can start 2 more.
We gotta find what the brain wants to read.
Yeah. And so, I mean, like, I think I've planned out pretty much every spot on the bingo sheet. So, like, the 500-page one, I'm rereading Caught in the Basilisks. Yes. By Mallory Dunlin. And so that one's 550.
We talked about that last episode.
We did, yes.
Go for a listen.
And by the time this episode comes out, the sequel. So I ended up on her ARC team, which stands for an advanced reader copy. And so independent authors will collect people who want to read their books. So the sequel to the Basilisk one is called Crowned by the Fae King. And it comes out August 15th. And so I guess this happens with trad publishers too, but usually when you are traditionally published, your publicist and or your editor and or your agent will figure out names of people who will probably enjoy it and then solicit their responses and send them physical or e-copies of the book that's coming out. But when you're an independent author, you basically have to go on to social media somewhere and be like, hey, does anyone want to read this? Please write reviews. And so anyone who volunteers to do it over and over or signs up to be like, yes, just send me all of your shit is part of their ARC team. Sometimes it's also called a street team. So I get ARCs from Mallory Dunlin now. And it's pretty great. So
that means you have a job.
I do have a job. So I have to finish the Basilisk reread by the end of July, basically. And then I'll have 2 weeks between August 1st and August 15th to read.
And that's probably going to be huge too, right?
I have no idea. I kind of hope it is.
I do for, like, your enjoyment, and I don't for bingo purposes.
I mean, by that, I haven't planned on putting it on any of the bingo things.
Right.
Like, I've got an audiobook picked out. I've marked off the trilogy. I'm not even reading any trilogies, but it just so happened that I hadn't read the third in a series. So I got that one. I've got, books with a short story anthology, multiple POVs, a book featuring a battle and or a DJ. Like, these are some, like, Mysterious Galaxy picked some very odd categories for bingo this year, and they're all supposed to be Olympics based.
Yeah. Which is cute in theory, IDK
and
about
just
execution.
Execution is a little iffy.
Probably it would be more entertaining if I knew/cared more about the Summer Olympics.
Yeah.
I actually just watched a YouTube special about how much the Olympics sucks.
Oh, that's not hard to find.
Nope. But it's like a John Oliver-esque
that's fun.
essay about So now I'm like, well, fork the Olympics.
Yeah. So Gabby made us a spreadsheet.
I made our spreadsheet. I mean, I copied last year's spreadsheet and
but
emptied it for us. But
it's an amazing spreadsheet.
Heck yeah.
It's super smart. Smarter than I am.
Highlights so far. Mallory Dunlin,
as always. Capture the Sun by Jessie Mihalik.
That was the trilogy.
Yes. And I will say, I gave you this disclaimer earlier. I don't think I would have liked it as much as I did if I had read it immediately after book 1 and 2. Because I remember by the end of book 2, I thought that the woman who'd be the main character in book 3 was kind of annoying. But I gave it 3 or 4 months because it sort of fell off my priorities. Then I read it and it was really fun.
Yay!
It was quite a lot of fun. So
I'm looking forward to those. Those will be good summer reads.
Yeah.
Those are like space romances, right?
Yeah, like
Basically.
SF romance,
Yeah.
basically. But like super exciting and adventures and gunfights and all that
Does the
stuff.
first one take place on a spaceship?
Yes.
Sweet.
Not all the way, but I mean enough that you can mark that.
Enough that it counts.
Yeah,
as a
absolutely
category.
counts as a bingo thing. Absolutely. So I've got a second Mallory Dunlin one that I read as the novella space. That one's called To Run with the Wild Hunt. It's not as good as the Basilisk one, but it's decent. And then while I was at your place, I finished Grief is for People, which is...
loved.
I loved the second half less than the first half. I think I gave it 4 stars overall.
Interesting.
Partially, I mean, like, it was a really well-written book, and it's about this woman, her best friend committed suicide, and didn't have, like, a history of depression or anything, and they'd been best friends since she started, or got out of college, and he was her first boss type thing, and she had a really hard time coping. But to try to cope, she read all this philosophy and scientific stuff, just, like, trying to find some sort of closure, I guess. And a lot of it was very moving, and it was incredibly well written. But by the end, it became clear that the book isn't actually about her friend's suicide. It's about her dealing with that suicide.
Mm.
And so by the end, it felt sort of like a failure of empathy.
Mm.
And I don't know if that was due more to the structure of the book, because the beginning was so moving and the rest of it was her trying to figure out how to move on. But it didn't fulfill all of my wildest dreams. So it was still really
Especially
good, though.
once the first half had been established.
Yeah. And
Did you say who the author was on that one?
Sloane Crowley, I believe. Sloane Crosley. That was one of the books I read at your place. And then right before I went to your place, I read Lone Women by Victor LaValle.
Mm-hmm.
That's in the pile of books I'm loaning you.
Want to hear a fun detour story about
Yes.
Victor LaValle before you say whatever you're going to say about Lone Women?
Absolutely.
So when I was at St. Andrews, there's a book that I picked up from...
Was it The Changeling?
Here's the thing. Here's the
His most favorite...
his
most famous title is The Changeling, and it actually just got turned into an Apple TV Plus movie, I think. It was either a movie or series.
Okay.
But I don't have Apple TV Plus, so I don't know if it's any good.
I do, but I also don't know if it's any good.
Okay. Anyway, continue.
So, there's a book that I got from one of the UK bookstores, like Waterstones or whatever, that was about a changeling.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think I finished it because it, like, ended up being not fun for me. And to this day, I don't remember what it was called. I don't remember who the author was. I remember exactly where in the bookstore I pulled it off the shelf. And it had a beautiful cover.
10 years ago.
And I've been trying to remember the title. Every time I see, and I've tried to, like, Google it to try and, like, narrow down what it could be.
What color?
The
what
thing
color
that-
is the cover?
It's like a dark, like, navy or purpley, but with, like, rainbow, like the rest is like rainbow decal, like, and I want to say it's like a tree or whatever. If I saw the cover, I would recognize it immediately. But every time I try to Google it, the only thing that comes up, it is, except I didn't love it. I don't actually want it again. I just really want to know what it was.
Okay,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just driving me crazy that I don't remember what it was called. But every time I try and look it up, the one that keeps coming up is The Changeling. And every time I see it, I'm like, is this it? And it never is. But every time I see The Changeling by Victor,
Because it is
I'm like, maybe this time.
easily the most popular book about changelings.
Like, now that we're talking about it, I'm literally going to look it up again just to be sure it's not that. But yeah, I can't remember what it was called. It's not the right cover.
Really upsetting. And it's been so long that if it's still in print,
it's definitely not.
then they will have probably released a different cover.
Right.
So you might never find out.
But it is literally about fairies and changelings. And it's the UK cover, so, like...
Is it the replacement?
No.
No.
I do think it is by an author whose last name is in the first part of the alphabet. Because I believe that's where it was on the shelf.
So little to
But
go
every
on.
time I've Googled, like, books about fairies and changelings, it doesn't come up, so I deke it one day. One day I'm gonna see it again.
And just about combust on the spot.
Yeah. I'm gonna be like, this was it! It's not even a book I care about! I wouldn't recommend it to anyone, but now I know what it is. Anyway, continue. Lone Women.
No idea where. Oh yeah,
Lone
Lone Women
by Victor LaValle.
The premise of that one is there's this black woman who is fleeing her home in the California Valley where all the agriculture stuff is, and it's like the early 1900s. It's right before World War I.
Okay.
And we don't know why she's fleeing. Her parents are both very like bloodily dead, and she puts their bodies in their bed and sets the whole house on fire and then leaves. And she's carrying this trunk with her, and she is the only person strong enough to carry it. And it's like a heavy ass thing. It nearly like swamps a wagon. Like,
is there a body in it?
Sort of.
I mean, I guess you can't tell me without spoiling it, but first guess.
Yes, it's a decent guess, but it's a heavy ass trunk, and so she gets a ride to the port. It's the port of LA, but I think it's like Huntington Beach.
Right. Yeah.
The big port.
Long Beach is where that is.
Long Beach, that's the one. And then she takes a boat up to Seattle, buys a plot of land in the middle of nowhere in Montana, and takes the train out. And that's where she's going to hide out for the rest of her life.
With
that's
her dead
plan.
body in a trunk.
Not a dead body.
Oh, that's a live body. No, it's okay. It's okay. You don't have to say anything.
Okay.
I'm gonna read it. It's in my pile now.
It's so good. It was nominated for the Stoker Award.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it didn't win, but it was very good.
Okay.
And
more interested now.
Yeah. And it's...
Nothing about this is up my alley at all.
I know. It's a historical fantasy, I guess. Okay. But it's based on this premise that for the Homesteading Act that the U.S. government would give out parcels of land to anyone who signed up. The wording of that is that any adult can receive the land. Okay. That means women can receive it, non-white people can receive it. And so these women who had nothing left to lose, or who needed to get out of Dodge, or who just...
Amazing that the Supreme Court didn't put a stop to that.
They didn't have our Supreme Court. Also, like, the government was, like, desperate to repopulate those lands once they'd, like, killed all of the indigenous peoples.
Yikes.
That comes up briefly, but it's really about these women who are running from something. And I mean, like, Montana's sort of, like, out there and hard to get to, even today. Literally the ends of the earth at the beginning of the 1900s. There is nothing out there. She has a shack that she stuffs newspaper into all the holes in the walls. The temperature is the same as it gets into the, like, -20s or whatever. Like, how are you supposed to survive? And almost no one has any money. And anyone who does is not to be trusted.
Yikes.
I mean, like, sort of like today, but like...
Well, I mean, yeah.
But it's such a good book.
Okay.
And it's not a huge book either. It's a very quick read. But also, the point worth noting is that I was reading this, and I couldn't have told you what was going to happen next, but I knew the vast majority of all the plot twists. And by the end of the book, I was losing my mind trying to figure out why. And I thought, okay, so it's got to be based on a short story that I have read in the past. And I was like, so it wouldn't be in the vampire anthology. That's not a vampire. It wouldn't be in the XYZ books I've got on my shelf still. And I was like, I'm going to have to finish this and then go through every fucking anthology I've read in the last, I don't know, 5 years?
Both being driven by Victor LaValle. Different way.
But it turns out in the acknowledgments, thank God, he said it's based on a short story from an anthology called Long Hidden, which I would have never guessed. It came out in 2012, 2013. It's not in print anymore. I read the ebook. I would not have thought to go looking through my ebook library.
You would never have found
I would have never found it. But he said it, so I don't have to lose my mind. Also, we're Facebook friends, so I was like, last case scenario. I hope I don't have to DM this guy. I haven't talked to him in 6 years.
For some reason, the first thing I jumped to was, so that means you could reach out to him and explain that you have a friend who's trying to remember a book about a changeling in the fairy, and it's not your book.
Self-centered, mate.
Do you know what book she was? Well, I jumped to like, oh, so you could ask him, forgetting that like there's no way, he has literally no connection
no way of knowing, yeah,
to that book, so it would be completely useless. Oh well.
God, that was. I'm so glad it was written in there though.
Yeah.
And the second he said long hidden, I was like, oh yeah.
So what bingo space are you using?
For it? I don't remember. I don't know if I need to.
There are probably 8 characters.
Yeah, that bingo spot is fully taken care of. There are several.
Yeah, my 2 rows are 8 characters and by a female or non-binary.
Yeah.
Just all of them.
Yep, that's it. That's mine too. Oh, also a book where 2 characters get wrapped up in each other, and it's half romance and half horror.
Oh, is it?
Well, my list. Yes.
Oh. I was thinking of Lone Women. I was like, what about Love is Zero?
Love is Zero. That's one of those bingo spots that sort of drives me insane.
Yeah.
I know it's based on tennis, and I know what they're saying.
Right.
So, like, a nonfiction book, that's Love is Zero.
Right, I know. I don't want to read a nonfiction book.
And I've got, like, 3 romances to pick from.
And I was like, maybe that's the one for 1,000 Mornings and Dog
by
Songs.
Mary
But
Oliver.
she has, like, poems in there about her dogs. And I'm like, well, but she loves her dog.
She loves her dog so much. So much. I'll never get through her Swans collection because like 3 poems, like a grand total of like 3 poems are about how much she loves her dead dog and she misses them. And I get to those and I'm like, okay, gonna read the whole collection. I get to that one, I'm like, nope, can't do it. Can't. What if there are more?
How big is that collection?
It's approximately the same size as the 1,000 Mornings one. They're teeny tiny.
I'm telling you,
half
audiobook
a centimeter or something.
Done in 45 minutes.
That's not a bad idea. Poetry out loud is always interesting.
Yeah. And she at least read 1,000 Mornings and she did Dog Songs, and it was kind of fun listening to her.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, okay.
Anyway.
Another book I really enjoyed while I was at your place was A Sorceress Comes to Call by T. Kingfisher. And this...
I think it's still not out yet, right?
No, it's not out till like October, maybe August, something like that.
I scored an arc during book.
Yeah, Gabby got an arc, and I was delighted. I love T. Kingfisher. Her horror is terrifying, and her fairy tales are perfect. And A Sorceress Comes to Call is like...
Comes out August 6th.
Natural conclusion of mixing her horror writing and her fairy tales. Because... it's dark as shit. It's so dark. And it's...
Darker than Nettle and Bone?
Yes.
Okay.
Because, like, the first 20 pages are this 14-year-old girl describing how her mother is abusing her.
Yikes.
So it starts off real dark, and then gets dark in multiple different ways.
Yikes.
But also, it's based on...
Goose Girl.
Loosely based on Goose Girl. The only, like... clear line between the original Goose Girl and A Sorceress Comes to Call is the name of the horse.
Amazing. What's the name of the horse?
Falada. Falada.
You're clearly more familiar with classic Goose Girl than I am. I know the basic plot. I don't have the horse's name down.
I don't actually know if I've ever read the basic Goose Girl. If I had, it's been many years. Mm-hmm. But I did read the Shannon Hale version.
Ooh,
when I was in high school. I read it like 8 times. I freaking loved it.
Wow. Well, now I'm more excited about that.
I used to reread books a lot more often. Before I realized I'll never read them all. But I'll die trying.
Yeah!
So that was also excellent.
Awesome.
And I took Vespertine home with me.
That's by Margaret Rogerson?
Yes. Because I didn't finish it while I was at your place. But it's got this gorgeous black and silver cover, and the whole premise is this nun named Artemisia is... How do I explain this?
It's another Angels one, right? Because like, every time I think of it, I think of Angel of Crows by Catherine Addison, because I haven't read that one either. But I think they have nothing to do with each other.
They're not super similar.
I just thought they both had something to do with angels, maybe.
There are no angels in Vespertine.
Okay.
They're all demons with wings.
Oh.
Like, bad demons. Like, almost wiped out humanity bad.
Oopsie.
And then there are 6 of the really bad ones called Revenants, who were trapped in reliquaries, which I feel like I should explain just because I had to look it up.
It's like a container for a magical...
For like a religious thing.
Yeah.
A container or shrine in which sacred relics are kept. Okay. So what would happen when they catch these revenants, this is well before the main character is born.
It's like a relic carry. Relic. Sorry.
I might remember that. So there's this big old war called the Silence, I think, where...
Good name for a big scary war.
Yeah. Where the infamous Raven King wanted to make himself immortal and accidentally opened up the gates to hell.
Oops.
Or the afterlife, the underworld, something like that. And now there are spirits everywhere, and they almost wiped out humanity.
Oopsie.
And the strongest spirits are revenants. And the only way that humanity caught them and kept them from killing everyone was by letting them possess you and then immolating yourself. And they're all like 14-year-old girls who did this. Like, this fell on like kids. And they're revered as saints. The reliquaries are like kept under like guard by these nuns. And the main character doesn't want anything to do with the outside world. Like,
Who does?
I actually have some issue with this because I spent 2/3 of the book, or at least half the book, thinking like she's very neurodivergent. And she is, but like she matches all of the like autism, not symptoms, signs.
Touchdown or whatever.
And but like it's from trauma. It's not, but like trauma from babyhood to 10 years old. So like the whole thing is that she was possessed as a baby and then was like left to grow up in a shed because she kept attacking everyone in her town, and there were like 3 huts and that was her village, middle of nowhere, no chance of salvation from anyone else. So she eventually, when she's 10, figures out how to, she doesn't even know she's possessed, but she just needs whatever is happening in her body to stop, and so she ends up accidentally banishing the spirit in this really not great way.
Cool.
But like word of that action gets back to the local nunnery, and the Mother Superior comes out, rescues her, takes her back to the nunnery. She is fully ready to just live in that teeny tiny little nunnery for her entire life, and she'd be very happy if no one ever talked to her again.
Right. But it's PTSD, not neurodivergent.
And it's, yeah, but like it
comes off in a very neurodivergent
like
way.
very autistic way.
Fascinating.
And like I don't know enough about the brain to be like, if that happens when you're a baby, has it changed your brain so that it's an autistic brain or close enough?
Right.
Or is it just
there's enough overlap between?
Right. Like how much overlap is there when your brain is so malleable? Anyway, so that one, I don't know how I feel about that part. But the rest of it is amazing. She obviously doesn't get to spend the rest of her life in solitude.
That doesn't work out.
There would be no book otherwise. But she ends up with a revenant in her. And they have to like save the world. While not like killing each other.
It's like Shadow of the Fox by Julie Kagawa.
Sort of.
Hakemono.
There's some similarities, but I wouldn't have put that together. But like, there's no romance in this, so it's a purely platonic relationship between her and the Revenant. But like, they call, I guess it's a he. The Revenant calls her Nun, and she like, they know her name, and she knows the name that humans gave the Revenant, but they call each other Revenant and Nun. Very working relationship, but like,
yay,
you'll love it.
Yay. I'm excited.
And, oh god, it was just really good. And then it turns out that Margaret Rogerson, the author, wrote it during lockdown.
Oop.
Yeah. So, like...
that's the...
There's
hiding
yeah.
from the world, maybe, a little bit.
And, yeah, and it was really good, though. I haven't read her Sorcery of Thorns, but her other books I've really enjoyed.
You haven't read Sorcery of Thorns?
I have not. I own it, but I haven't read it.
Okay. I was gonna say, if you want to borrow it, I do have that one. That's the only one of hers I've read, and I did love it.
Yeah, that one got really good reviews. Yeah, I really enjoyed that.
Cool.
It took me a while to finish it, but not because it was bad. It was because my brain was being weird.
I wonder why.
Who can say?
It's a mystery.
And then what else did I read while I was at your place? Oh, Bitter Medicine.
Oh, yeah!
Yeah, you'll really enjoy that.
Yeah!
That's by something Tsai.
Mia Tsai.
Mia Tsai.
Because, like, her online handle is It's a Mia. which is just
incredible.
Right? It's incredible enough that it's been a month and I still remember it. So that one was very fun.
Yay!
And it's right up your alley.
Yay!
And the one part that I was just deeply impressed by was apparently the author speaks like 3 different languages. And so all the characters speak different languages. Like the love interest speaks French and English. The main character speaks not Cantonese, but some kind of Chinese dialect and English.
Is there like dialogue in text?
Yeah.
That's another bingo spot.
That's what my bingo spot is for.
I technically already have like 2 that fit that category, but
yeah. I mean, it's that and several others. But like, there's no sense of translation. There's one saying that gets explained, but that's because it's like a saying in French. It's translated, it's until now, all goes well, which is technically the same as like so far so good, but then she explains like it's way more cynical in that like so far everything's going good, but this is now it's all going to go to hell immediately
in a
now.
like jinx kind of way.
Yes, but like that's the only time anything is explained. The main character and her brother speak that dialect together, and they're like all the characters are there, and there's no explanation except like how mad they are at each other when they're fighting and stuff. Like you don't need every word explained. It's great.
Yay!
It's great.
Yay!
So much fun. And it felt like she was acknowledging how smart we could be by not explaining things. I trust you to keep up.
Yay!
Which is nice.
I wish I knew 3 languages.
Yeah, that would be fun. And I knew, like, I couldn't pull it out of my ass, but like I could read enough French still.
Yeah.
Because I took 2 years in high school or whatever. I think that's all I took. There's no way anyway.
I took enough Spanish that when French shows up, I'm like, I recognize one of those words.
I took just enough French in high school so that when I was in Paris, I could translate the menu. And that was it. But it was very useful.
I was going to say, that's sometimes all you need.
That was, yeah.
I do have enough Dutch to figure out most of the menu.
Oh, that's cool. That's useful. Because you keep going back.
I do. Somehow, I keep going back.
So those were the ones I read at your place, I think. But like, I've been doing
that really well for you.
It did. It really did. What else have I read recently? Oh, What My Bones Know.
Oh, that's the one you like. That's the one I thought you were talking about when you were talking about Grief is for People. And I was like, you've been way more rabid about that given what you just said, and I'm confused now.
Absolutely rabid about What My Bones Know by Stephanie Fu, and if you read nonfiction at all, you've probably heard of this one. It came out this year. It's a memoir of this woman who has complex PTSD, which, fun fact, is not part of the DSM-5 in America.
Well, wasn't the DSM-5 itself way updated anyway?
But you can't get diagnosed for something that's not in the DSM.
Amazing.
Yeah. So you can be diagnosed with CPTSD in, like, Britain, but not in the US, which means it's very difficult to get treatment.
I love this country. Happy 4th of July.
Oh, God. So,
Future Gabby here. Smack and I are about to discuss some of the darker topics that come up in What My Bones Know. These include child abuse, some mentions of child abandonment, and some discussion of medical treatments that the author goes through on her quest to come to terms with her CPTSD. If you would like to move past all that, feel free to fast forward to the 50-minute and 20-second mark.
It's like a book in 6 parts or something. And the first part is going through her childhood, which is absolutely horrific. Daily beatings. Her dad tried to take a 9-iron to her head.
Oh my God.
And her mother would regularly threaten to kill either herself or the author, Stephanie Fu, or both of them. And just like one of the least horrible things would be when her mother gets depressed, takes a cleaver into the bedroom, and the author would stand at the door with her ear pressed up against her, trying to decide, at what point do I call 911 when she has promised that if 911 saves her, she'll kill the daughter. Horrific stuff. And then in high school, this is part 1. This is like her being like, yeah, I'm a little traumatized. Just a little bit. And that's how she approached it, was that like, yeah, I'm a little traumatized,
well,
but
I think
it's
that's
over.
how a lot of people
minimize it.
Yeah.
And like her parents both abandoned her by the time she was 15 or so, so she was living in a house by herself all through high school.
Like, good?
And not good. Like nothing. Like she would regularly almost kill herself. Like it's a miracle she made it through high school. But then like she loved journalism class and she majored in journalism and she worked her ass off because to sit with just her own thoughts was completely impossible. So she'd work like 12, 15-hour days, 6 days a week, and ended up with her dream job by the time she was about 30. And she was a producer for This American Life. And that's all she's ever wanted. But she ended up with a really abusive boss. And it brought everything that she thought she had gotten over roaring back. Just panic attacks, sobbing at her desk every day. And it was her that he singled out. No one else he treated this way. And finally, she just couldn't. So she had some money set aside. And she quit her job and was like, I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to get treatment. I'm going to get all better. And then I can go back to work. And you can't get all better from complex PTSD. Like, it changes your brain. Complex, I should have explained this to begin with. Complex PTSD versus regular PTSD. PTSD without the complexity is based on one or two traumatic events. And so those few events is what breaks your brain. Whereas complex PTSD is constant trauma over many years. And so a lot of people who grew up being abused as children have complex PTSD, and it changes your brain. There is no getting better. You can minimize
unless you're in America,
in which case you don't even get diagnosed.
Nope.
But you can treat it, and you can minimize your responses to all those triggers. Mm-hmm. And so she tried talk therapy, and her first therapist that she had been seeing for 8 years, turns out her therapist had always known she had CPTSD and just didn't share the diagnosis with her because either she didn't want to ruin things when the author was like feeling well, but she also didn't want to make things work when the author was depressed. So like from a good intention, but like really poor ethics.
Yeah.
And so the author splits with this therapist and has to go looking for another one, which if anyone in the US has ever tried to find a therapist that's on their insurance that they like, that can help them,
it's impossible.
It's impossible.
I've never tried and I know it's impossible.
I got really lucky once, so.
You read this awful book.
I read this amazing book where I was so interesting and well-informed. Like, she talks about all of the latest information that we have and how people access it and how people don't access it and what works and we don't know why, because there's a lot of that. And she does, what's it called? EMDR. I think that's what it is, because the other one is a dance music. No, like house dance music.
Right, electronic dance music.
Yeah. Anyway, so it's not that.
Okay.
And it's this weird thing that is recently developed, or at least recently.
Sorry, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing.
Yes. So what you do is you find someone who knows what they're doing. And then, Step one. And then
the hardest step.
You hold on to these things that buzz.
Okay.
One in each hand. They look sort of like when you're playing with a VR game. Mm-hmm. And then you have these headphones in. And what happens is that it's almost not noticeable, but the things in your ears beep irregularly, and the things in your hand buzz irregularly. And it's to keep you from disappearing into the memory too far, so that you can rewrite it and make yourself safe in a particular memory. So, like, in the one that really, like, she didn't expect any kind of response, but her second time trying it, she found a traumatizing enough memory to make it work. And then she imagined that her boyfriend came to save her little child self. And it wasn't working. And so the therapist goes, well, what about adult you? Can you get your childhood self to, like, let go of your parents in this memory? Because the boyfriend, in her mind, came in and was trying to remove her child self from this situation. Mm-hmm. And she wouldn't go. she's not going to abandon her parents. Everyone else has abandoned her. And then her adult self comes in and is like, they abandon you too. Let's go. And it works.
Well.
And so she comes out of this session after months of like looking for therapists and doing a million types of meditation and yoga and relaxation and grounding. And she just stands in the hallway with these like tears going down her face being like, what the fuck? But it only works the once and it isn't enough for her. So she continues on her journey, but it's so incredibly well written.
Wow.
It's so well written and it's engaging and like, I don't read a lot of creative nonfiction, but like this is top 3 of what I've read this year. Easily.
Wow.
Easily top 3.
3 across the board or top
across
3
the board.
creative?
Across the board. And I really just can't recommend it enough. It's so good. I read it in like 2 giant gulps.
Wow.
Yeah.
That sounds like a lot to read.
It was so good though.
Man.
Did
you get that one from the library?
I did.
Mm-hmm.
I'd been on the hold list for a while, but it was so worth it. It was so worth it. I wasn't sure at the beginning.
Okay, good to know. Is love 0?
No.
Oh, right. There's a boyfriend.
Yeah. And like, she and her boyfriend have the most amazing, compassionate, and heartfelt and inclusive wedding.
Plot twist.
I know. I mean, like,
I was really worried about the boyfriend angle.
I mean, she doesn't really go into it, but like, she has a bunch of like toxic romantic relationships growing up. And like, when she's in her 20s, she has to teach herself how to empathize and be a good friend. And so like, she's done all this work on herself and thinks in the beginning that like she's gotten over it, she's evolved past it. So it's really, really shocking to her when an abusive boss just tosses her off the deep end. And there is one point where she quits, kind of like dramatically, like, I'm not putting up with this anymore. You signaled me out. This is abusive. You're a horrible boss. I'm gone. And then his boss calls to beg her to come back.
Then get rid of him.
And she was like, no.
Yay!
Which is like so...
vicarious thrill.
Yep.
Any other highlights you want to... Because you talked about what you read at my place. If there's anything else worth mentioning. I guess you already talked about Mallory Dunlin, which is what you're in the middle of now.
I'm in the middle of several books at the moment. One of them is The Familiar by Leigh Bardugo, and that's really quite good.
You've been excited about that.
Yeah. The middle to the beginning of the 3rd act has been a little bit slower.
Typical.
But also, like, it's still really good. And the historical details are fantastic.
What's that one about?
That one takes place in Inquisition Spain. The main character is a Jewish girl who has magic and is pretending she's not Jewish. And rich guys are looking for people with powers to help King Philip, who lost his armada to Queen Elizabeth quite recently.
Loser.
Yeah. And longtime listeners will remember my lecture on the storm that took out Philip's armada as he was trying to invade Elizabethan England. And so it turns out, what I didn't know when I explained all that to Gabby last year, I don't know, a while ago, is that there was this woman named Lucretia. I mean, I say woman, she was quite young, she was like a teenager or so. And she had visions, and like the vast majority of them were true. And she foresaw Philip's armada being destroyed in a storm.
Very Cassandra-esque.
Yeah, but like, when it happened, she was jailed by the Inquisition because they were mad that she didn't foresee them beating England. And they were saying...
this really happened.
Yeah, this part is real. And they were saying that it was unclear if her powers came from God or the devil, and whether she foresaw it happening or whether she made it happen by saying it out loud. And that was the whole, like, reason to hold her in jail.
Sure.
She's a traitor, she's the reason everything failed, etc.
If I were someone who thought that another person was responsible for wiping out my entire armada, I don't think I would put them in jail. I think if I truly believed they had the power to wipe out an armada, I'd be like, here's some money. Let me put you up in this house. Please don't curse me.
I thought you were going to say, yes, I'd execute them.
Or that. Which, if I had the power to completely wipe them off the board.
Yes, and he does. It's like,
I was more like, you catch more flies with honey.
yes, that's why you would be a better monarch than Philip.
People should put me in charge. That's how monarchies work.
The Supreme Court will love you. Okay, moving on.
Anyway.
It's an interesting book because there's the specter of the Inquisition through it all.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, the main character's aunt is, like, the main character is quite poor. She works as a scullery maid, and both of her parents died paupers. Her mother was buried in a Catholic pauper graveyard, and she doesn't even know what happened to her father's body because he was begging on a bridge and died, and they got rid of his body.
Bummer.
Yeah, but like her aunt, her dad's sister, got her hands on some money doing some distasteful things that she did not enjoy, but she got herself kitted out as if she was a wealthy widow, and then caught the eye of this wealthy guy who would take her as his mistress, and then he provided for her, and that was, she was very successful at that. And so he's the one that takes the niece, who's the main character, and gives her fancy clothes and how to behave with rich people, and like he's basically the bank. He's not the one who figures out like how to display her powers to their best advantage, but he's the ultimate arbiter on like how she is going to present herself in this rich world.
Gotcha.
And it's really interesting.
What are you loving so much about it?
I like how detailed everything is. Like, I've had to stop and like Google Spanish words that either they didn't show up in like Google Translate. Like, I'd have to Google like auto de fe is.
There were some in like Mimicking of Known Successes by Malka Older that like had Spanish roots, but it seems like she either they're obscure and colloquial, or like she took the roots and like made new futuristic words out of them, as if language had developed with it, and I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, that's very futuristic though.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just really good historical fiction with also fantasy.
Yay.
Shadow monsters.
That's the one with the point of view thing, right?
Yeah, it's omniscient point of view, and it's done really, really well. Like, I can't do omniscient point of view effectively. I'm just not good at it. I haven't had enough practice. And it's frankly been very out of vogue for 20 years or more. So,
cowards.
It's less cowardice and more like
cowards!
Snobbery. So like,
6 of one,
half a dozen
of
of
the other.
Cowards and snobs. So I started Slewfoot yesterday, which is by this Brom, Brom, that's his only name that goes on these things. It has some really cool illustrations. It takes place in
You should do that, but with smack. Sorry, anyway, continue.
Okay. So it takes place in 1666 Connecticut with a Puritan colony, I guess. And they've broken off from the Hartford Puritans because those guys had too much money and were not pure.
Those guys.
I know. And so the main character is this woman named Abatha, whose father sold her, sort of. Like, he got some money to send her off to the New World. Like, she's born in London, and she was sent off to the New World to become a wife.
Yikes.
And the guy she ends up married to is actually, like, really kind. He's about 10 years her senior. He's not... I think he's neurodivergent. He has a really hard time with eye contact and expressing himself in words. And, of course, he's grown up Puritan and is, like, has internalized that, like, drawing is bad, art is bad. Like, you're supposed to basically abuse your wife or you're not doing it right. But he's a really kind dude, and they're together for like 2 years before anything romantic happens between them, because they like each other and they respect each other. And so,
right.
And he shields, like, she cannot keep her mouth shut. Like, she does not belong in a Puritan colony at all. And even though he's not good at the social stuff, he shields her as much as possible. Because, like, if a woman is seen talking back to her husband, she ends up spending several days in the stocks. Great. Overnight. Great. Barefoot. Great. In Connecticut, regardless of the weather.
Yikes. Charming.
Yeah. Yeah. This doesn't portray the Puritans particularly well. And this part isn't a spoiler because it says on the back that she's a widow. but he doesn't last very long.
Gotcha.
Yeah. But soon, there's this monster that's, like, coming back to life.
Okay.
The more blood he has. So, like, a goat went missing at the beginning of the story, and now her husband has had a terrible fall into a pit that none of them can reach the bottom of.
Yikes.
Yeah. And so the more blood this guy gets, they call him now Father. He used to be, like, a protector of some sort of, like, the wild areas.
It's an interesting choice for a Puritan colony to call.
They don't call him that.
Oh.
There are terrifying little spirits.
Gotcha.
Who call him Father, and I guess he was their protector, but he doesn't really remember all that much, and they're like, you need more blood, then you'll remember. And they have illustrations of all these weird little spirits, and they are terrifying. They're basically, it's like an anglerfish with its mouth open and a child's face in the mouth. Scary. And then it's basically the same thing. There's an opossum, a crow, and some other animal. And they all have human, sort of androgynous, but sort of like cruelly masculine as well, baby faces coming out of their mouths.
Do you want a fun little marine bio detour for
Yes.
half a second?
Yes.
You know those really creepy deep sea fish?
Uh-huh.
E.g. the anglerfish?
Mm-hmm.
You know what makes them significantly less spooky? Knowing how big they are. They're so
Are they?
small.
Really? Like anglerfish are like
I think pretty
An
sure
inch?
anglerfish or like some of those creepy like related fish are just like quarter size. They're
I knew they weren't like as big as. Well, I mean, you get like these weird fish that wash up and they're like 6 feet tall and like
right.
a foot like wide, like weird creatures.
Some of these bigger ones are like 13 centimeters, which is like half a foot.
Yeah.
At most. And then some of these are more like 9, 8. And then one of them's only like 3
centimeters.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing.
And like in general, the spookier they look up close,
The
more
smaller
from your
they
nightmares. They're like so teeny.
Teeny tiny little babies.
Mhm.
Nightmare babies.
And I think this is harking back to my deep sea bio days, which is a very long time ago.
A while ago.
But I believe the reason is that once you get that deep, most of what's feeding that layer is detritus that's like raining down. So it's not a whole lot of biomass to be feeding on. It's very opportunistic. So you can only get so big.
Yeah. Oh, that's fascinating.
Anyway, Slewfoot.
I love that so much. I love weird deep. Like, I don't want to actually like study deep sea shit.
Right.
But I love, like, if someone would just tell me about them, I'd go to that lecture.
That lecture, I expected to be more fun. It was one of those Tuesdays and Thursdays at 9 a.m. and it was like 3 hours.
That's too much.
And it was an older guy who'd been in the field forever, so he had a lot of cool stories, but he tended to ramble and like get really like detailed and technical, but without like anything engaged. Like he was very much like a lecturer instead of a like engaging presenter. Yeah. And it was so early when you're a college kid and just so long. And you're just like,
there's something
such
about
a good
9 a.m.
in
undergrad that is just so impossible.
Yep.
And I'm a night owl to begin with, but like I can get up.
Yeah, I regularly get up before 9.
It's
just
not
fine.
a big deal
but
anymore.
Something about I remember like staying awake was just so hard.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, Slewfoot.
Slewfoot. So it has these terrifying creatures who are like egging him on and
not
trying
quarter
to like
size.
Not quarter size.
Can you imagine just a teeny tiny but terrifying looking creature?
And they float.
Yeah, just trying to
get
you to
fish
do things.
Ones are like they describe them as like swimming in a current that no one else can see. And the crow one doesn't talk that like we can hear.
Right.
The other like the opossum can understand him, but like it's a one-sided,
terrifying looking opossum.
Yeah, it's there. I love that it comes with illustrations.
Yeah, if you see this on the shelf, we recommend flipping.
Absolutely,
because that's definitely at least half the value.
Yeah, and this is very like particular, but it means I'm not going to actually end up painting these pages. I don't remember if I've said this on the podcast. I take pretty books and I paint the pages like you would get special editions from a publisher.
Sprayed edges.
Yeah. I mean, they're called sprayed edges. I do like dry brush. And I don't do spray because from what I've seen, it's really hard to get all the nooks and crannies, particularly when you have like newspaper on the covers, particularly with paperback. But anyway, the illustrated pages are a different like texture. So I like it wouldn't work. But a lot of how I look at books these days is like, what color would I make these pages?
I'm wondering if you could like painter's tape around the edges of the illustrated section.
Oh, you
paint
probably
the rest
could.
of it and just have a weird white stripe where the illustrated pages were.
For my birthday, my parents got me like delicate painter's tape. So like you can pull it off the covers 6 weeks later and it won't wreck anything.
Aw, that's such a good
I
gift.
know. It's because I bought the cheap shit and some of
Ruined.
it. Oh my god, I just lost my mind.
Oh no.
Like it wasn't a huge deal. I turned it into a huge deal.
Sure. And especially because, like, the end goal is to be able to make our prettiest ones super pretty.
Yeah.
But if you might destroy them in the process of making them pretty, that does take the shine off of it.
Done everything wrong with your entire life.
She did. She just finished the last of my, like, Jade City novellas. And
Yeah,
I'll
they're
put up a
two-story
picture
collections.
on Instagram if I remember to do that. Because I've been waiting for a chance to get all 5 of them together so that I can take a family photo.
Yay!
So I'm excited to share that. They're going to look so good all together.
And I do put them up on our Instagram.
This is by Fonda Lee. Yeah, you're much better about the Instagram.
Because I like to brag about it. Look what I did.
should.
It's so pretty. Anyway, so I expect it to get very bloody and
Slewfoot, not your painting.
vengeful. Yes, not my painting. And I gotta say, I only have twice done patterns because I am the worst artist in the world. If I can do solid colors, we're great.
You have to be bad at something before you can be good.
That's
at something.
true. And it is just a hobby, but like, I don't know, it's complicated. Anyway. There will be bloody vengeance.
Two
in
of
this
them
story.
belong to me, and I love them.
Good.
So
I'm also going to do Vespertine, which
was a ruined surprise.
Yeah, right. I
should say that's Margaret Rogerson in case this ends up
Right.
in another episode.
right.
but-
We talked about Vespertine in the last one.
unless it's this one.
Anyway.
Anything else noteworthy of recent reads, now reads, in the middle of reads?
I got like 18 pages into this nonfiction book called The Heat Will Kill You First
Do you remember
by
the
Jeff Goodell, Goodell. And
we ain't having any of it.
I almost bought it because I was so sure that like it would be good research for like a lot of my fiction takes place in and around California deserts. And the book, The Heat Will Kill You First, is about global warming and extreme heat and heat zones and like how much worse it's going to get. But I was so sure it was going to be fascinating, and I'm sure it would be, but like there are a lot of anecdotes about people who died on hiking trails or from other heat-related...
Which brings us to this month's public safety announcement from ITBR. Take heat seriously, okay?
Yeah,
okay.
Don't hike after, like, I don't know,
Nope.
11 a.m.?
I know I have a friend of a friend who went hiking, did everything right. Went with a nurse friend, went hiking like early in the morning. Didn't make it.
And we live in San Diego, and last month a woman died on a very, like, not hard hike, very near my house. I mean, it's a hike I've done multiple times.
Me too.
It's not like a hard... I'm not going to do a hard hike, but, like, it's just...
Don't fuck around with the heat, man.
Yeah, and if you go to a desert, make sure you have at least, at minimum, a gallon of water per person per day.
Yes.
And throw some Gatorade in there.
Yep,
Jesus,
electrolytes.
just please don't die. And
Yep.
if you don't have Gatorade, if you put a pinch of salt into like a quart of water, that can sub in a pinch.
So.
Anyway,
Very serious topic.
end of PSA.
And a PSA.
I think that's all I got, though.
But we DNF'd that.
We sure did DNF that.
It was
It was
too stressful.
I mean, like,
not so much informative as
it's just
real
sad.
horrifying stories.
Really sad. This 2-year-old girl who had these like great parents, and they were out. And anyway, it was bad.
Anyway.
It was bad. So at least I didn't buy it.
Yay!
And I get to return a library book. I picked up 5 yesterday. The current count that I have checked out is 9.
We're being so good at supporting our local library.
We are. And I'm saving so much money. I keep saying I'm going to add it all up just to like
Do
make
it.
myself
Sometime
feel
before
good.
the end of the year, you should. That would be fun.
Yeah.
Fun little project.
Maybe this month and then at the end of the year.
Okay. Well, we have to go feed somebody.
Somebody who's been begging this whole time.
So maybe
here's
we'll
hoping
say,
you find a book outside of your genre that is just so good you can't stop talking about it. It's so good.
I'm scared of it.
It's so good. You shouldn't be scared of it. I mean, if you had any of those triggers, you should be wary. Why are you licking me? Okay, bye.
Okay, bye. Thanks for listening. This has been another episode of Infinite TBR.
You can find us online at infiniteTBR.com. You can email us at itbrshelf@gmail.com. And we're also on Instagram at
Infinite TBR Podcast.
and individually on Instagram.
At Gabbledon, which is like Megalodon, but with Gab in the front of it.
And at what_Smack said, because Instagram locked me out of at what Smack said. So
Here we are.
here we are. See you next time.